many strangulations, and this has continued to fuel these conspiracy theories. What I thought was so interesting is that the cause of death still remains pending. That means that the medical examiner is looking for a lot more facts in order to make a determination. As you said, that particular bone, more common in a strangulation, possible though in a hanging, depending on certain factors like age and other things. But the medical examiner not committing to the suicide theory yet.
So I still have this outside contention that he may not even be dead. The only evidence we've seen so far is him being wheeled into a hospital at 8 a.m. in the morning when it was on 4chan. He was dead at 5:30.
Right.
So if you're dead at 5:30, in New York, they bring you to the medical examiner's office. They don't bring dead bodies to the hospital. There's nothing for them to do there.
It was bizarre. Everything about this case has been bizarre, from the way that MCC was overseeing Epstein, or actually not overseeing Epstein, for their failures on multiple levels. And you're absolutely right. That gap in time is just unheard of in this type of situation. And look, you're not the only one who has that theory. There's lots of different theories bopping around. But look, as far as getting into what happened at that prison, that's something that we really have to look into, because in prisons, to avoid things like this, there's all these fail safes. There's A, B, C, D, and if they fail, well, there's E, F, G that should be working smoothly. So every single thing that could have gone wrong did in this case, which is not the norm by any means.
Misty, let me ask you about the news that we're reading about today, which is, one, apparently Epstein's last words to his attorney was, "I'll see you on Sunday," when in actuality, if he was going to kill himself on Saturday, he wouldn't have been seeing anybody on Sunday. And apparently he was also in a jovial mood when he was seen by the last folks that saw him. That, coupled with the autopsy results that John alluded to, coupled with the fact that one of the people guarding him wasn't even a guard, and they apparently were both asleep. In your opinion, does that suggest that there may have been some foul play here?
Yeah, certainly there's suspicious circumstances here. We need more information in order to make that ultimate determination. But you're talking about all those factors that you just discussed, and the failures of MCC when you've got the most high-profile prisoner in the country.
In the world, probably.
So much, absolutely. The fact that so much fell through the cracks, that is not, that's just not something that's going to happen in this particular case, even when you have people working overtime. This is a person that tried to commit suicide already. So you would think of Epstein as a suicide risk generally, because you're talking about a billionaire who's now in prison, and we know that sexual offenders of minors, they don't get treated too well in prison. So he could be a suicide risk for that reason, but then you have the prior attempt. So
it was reported that, one, the prior possible suicide attempt was actually an attack from another inmate. It was also reported that he might have been removed from suicide watch at his lawyer's urging. If either of those things were true, does that in any way maybe make this a little bit less suspicious?
See, I actually think the removal from suicide watch, that might not even be the most suspicious component, because prisoners aren't often kept on suicide watch for that length of time just in general. However, the fact that there weren't these 30-minute rotations, that to me, he was dead for 3 hours before somebody found him. That means he hasn't been checked on for 3 hours. That's,
well, clearly, at the very best,
the
very best thing you could say about the Bureau of Prison officials here was just pandemic incompetence. As the most charitable thing you could say about
this prison, though, does not have a high suicide rate. That's what's interesting. So it seems that in other cases, much less high-profile cases, they're able to take preventative measures. But in this particular case, no.
We had clinical psychologist Dr. Judith Kuryansky on yesterday, and she said the number one sign that someone may commit suicide is a previous attempt.
Right.
So
yes.
My question to you as an attorney and a well-known trial attorney, if as a lawyer, if someone says, hey, I killed someone, you can't say anything.
Right.
You have to protect them and defend them. But if someone says, I'm about to kill someone, then you have some obligation to try to prevent that from happening. If Epstein ever uttered the words to his attorneys, I might as well just kill myself, Is there some ethical challenge that the lawyers may have to actually fight to get him off suicide watch?
Yeah, look, it's possible because your communications with your attorney are confidential. So it would depend on the words used. It would depend on whether or not this was a possible crime in the future. Look, I think that his attorneys would probably be able to argue that their ethical obligation is to keep those communications closed, unless, look, if they thought it was a serious statement, there's a big difference between here's my plan, this is what I'm going to do, I intend to do it, and maybe I should just kill myself, which could be seen as a a statement that you might
Do you think
say under the
those
circumstances.
rooms, because it's rumored that Epstein was meeting with 2 attorneys for 12 hours a day to stay out of his cell. Do you think those rooms that they meet with the attorneys in are recorded?
Probably not.
Probably not.
No, because those communications, again, would be confidential. There might be video recording, but there's not going to be audio of those meetings.
My last Epstein-related question, and then I hope we can get your take on these horrible shootings in Philadelphia, which could have been so much worse. But it has to do with the Florida case. There was a great deal of attention paid, even before Epstein's death, to why he got such a sweetheart deal in Florida. It actually cost Alex Acosta a cabinet post. I'm wondering what happens to the investigation into that sweetheart deal now. Do those investigations continue, or with Epstein gone, are they likely to go away with him?
No, these investigations are going to continue. So you have the vow from Bill Barr that he's not only taking this seriously, but he's taking this personally, and he wants to get down to the bottom of this. You also have the Manhattan federal prosecutor saying we're going to continue the investigation. But right now, that agreement, that non-prosecution agreement that is at issue, is again being challenged. So a federal judge already said that violated the Victims Protection Act. So now attorneys are seeking to essentially reverse the non-prosecution deal for the 4 accomplices who were a part of that deal, so they can't be prosecuted. So there's a lot of scrutiny still on that deal, what happened. And look, from my perspective, I get it. The prosecutorial misconduct and prosecutorial discretion, it's hard to look back.
Sure.
But a violation of the Victims Protection Act is unexcusable.
All right, speaking of prosecutors, in Philadelphia, they have elected as their district attorney a real criminal justice reformer, Larry Krasner. And I say this as somebody that has believed for many years there's way too many people in prison. But Larry Krasner essentially campaigned on a platform of not putting anyone in jail. Yesterday, turns out this person who had been arrested many times, who I can't see any reasonable way why he was still walking around on the street, ends up shooting 6 police officers. In your judgment, honestly, is this a reflection of this new Krasner era prosecutorial styling of not putting anybody in jail?
Yeah, look, it's a huge problem. You have someone with a criminal history of that length, and it's really only when you're crossing into these horrible, violent crimes that you're getting the ability to keep someone in jail. In fact, there's reforms coming up in New York that are going to have a similar impact. So, look, that's a huge problem, and it's balanced. There's no easy answer to these questions because you've got overcrowding and population issues versus public safety issues. And certainly there's, especially after an incident like that, it shoots this type of narrative right into the forefront because this was an absolute tragedy on what should have been a routine
narcotics bust.
Yeah, exactly, with a warrant. Now, that is sometimes one of the most dangerous things police officers are doing, going to execute these warrants. You know, they're going to someone's house basically saying, we gotcha, and you're going to get arrested. And certainly they can hit someone who's obstinate or violent, but this was something that, this is unusual. 6
like
cops
outrageous.
shot. And the people in the neighborhood said this was like a war zone. This was something that they've never seen before. Exactly. So certainly it's the one thing we can take away from it is let's look at these reforms and see if they're really protecting public safety.
And all this stuff going on domestically, but we had Donald Trump reaching out to foreign authorities to get ASAP Rocky released from jail, and now we're finding that he's been convicted of assault. So what's in the future for ASAP?
Well, he's been convicted, but the judges determined that he doesn't have to serve any jail time. So although he's been convicted in a foreign country, he's going to have that conviction on his record, but the jail time's not going to be at issue. So prosecutors did recommend jail time. who knows whether it's the lobbying of Donald Trump or whatnot, but the panel of judges determined
Kim
that
Kardashian,
it wasn't.
who's
Yes,
gotten a lot of people
that
on.
the Kardashian effect. I think it might be a real thing.
Yeah.
Here's my only
Kanye
question
effect.
about ASAP Rocky. Is that how it's pronounced? I don't understand why there's a dollar sign
That's
in his
like
name.
his nickname, like Kesha.
Yeah.
You know,
She's got the dollar sign.
Yeah.
too? Okay.
I might just add the dollar sign to Misty.
Yeah, there you
Misty.
go. There you go. I like it.
Misty.
I mean, you know what I'm going to do?
I like
In Frank, add the at symbol. I'm going to be, FR at symbol NK.
Make you unique.
I like, Misty.
Woo!
With
See?
the.
That
not
was
bad.
good.
From now
Look
on,
at
next
that.
time
Look
Misty
at that.
comes on, that's going to be her lower third.
Misty.
She's got to have
That's me.
dollar sign
Dollar sign.
TY.
But who is ASAP Rocky? Did anyone know who he was before he got convicted of assault, before he was arrested for assault? I'd never heard of this guy.
I think he's really been thrown into the limelight because
It's the
of
best
that,
thing that
but,
ever happened to his
he's-
career.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
he's.
he's probably topping the Billboard charts these days.
John,
and,
for-
I can't name
That'll
a
create a
single
lot of
email.
downloads. A lot of downloads once you start hearing
For our
the name.
show's sake, John, we may have to send you to Sweden to go beat up somebody.
Yeah, and never know. Maybe we'll get ASAP Rocky on here to give his side of the story. We're available if you want to come down.
Or the Swedes. We'd be happy to have the Swedish prosecutors on.
Misty Marris, MI$TY Marris, on all the channels, giving all the best things you want to hear about the legal ramifications and the legal side of the Epstein and other legal cases. We'll have you back again hopefully soon. Thank you very much. We'll have you back in 2 minutes. Stay right there. Coming up after this, social critic Marlena Shaivo.